Lord, we pray, Lord, as we embark on this discussion and these technical ideas, Lord, Father, Lord, may it be beneficial to us in our various places of work in our mighty name of Jesus Christ. We put everyone that is still on their way to home with the blood of Jesus Christ. We ask Holy Spirit of God, help us, O Lord. May this be a benefit to our society and our career in Jesus' mighty name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. Let's also, in honor of our nation, take the national anthem. One nation, bounding us in peace and unity. Thank you for that. At this point, I'd like to invite the YP chair to take us through the safety moment. Next after God, next after honor to the nation is to be safe. YP chair, please. Justice.
Yeah, good evening, Lord.
Good evening.
Excellent. So, welcome to the meeting, and actually, very to actually follow safety. Your driving is safe that you don't join this meeting because it can actually make you to not pay attention. So, your driving, you can actually pause to go to a particular spot, you can stay and wait. So, you don't have issues. Mute your mic when you're not speaking. Raise your hand when you want to speak. Like it's written that you see or comment, key for question. Always stay safe. It's a virtual meeting, but if you're at home and in case a fire incident occurs, make sure that you can see your fire alarm even with your headset. So let it not be too loud, where external noise will not be noted, not yet. And also, lastly, know that safety starts with you, next person, and to everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, YP Chair. Please let's take those words to heart. Let's not always see safety as one of those moments we have to observe. Please take them seriously and adhere to those safety advices and instructions. I see quite a number of senior members on the call. I see our own dear Professor Mike, two Mikes, senior members and the rest. I'll let this section chair recognize them as she takes the opening remark. Madam Chairperson, welcome, Madam. Thanks for being here with us, as usual. I'd like to yield the mic and the floor to you for your welcome address. Thank you, Madam.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks, TIC, for the introduction. So it's a honor for me to welcome everyone on this call to the first monthly technical meeting for this board year, the 2023-2024 Port Harcourt session board year. We are really grateful that you created time to join the call. I want to first start by appreciating Prof. Mike Onyekong, an SD and a very senior member, for joining the call. Other board members that are on the call, thank you for joining. And every other person who is on this call, both those that are SP members and non-SP members. I also want to thank Mr. Ibe for wanting to share this knowledge with us on the possibility of a high recovery from naturally depleted reservoirs. I mean, this is the best time for us to be listening to such discussion and having conversation on this. When we think about the cost of oil, the current price, and all the wars ongoing, Ukraine, Israel, wherever, and stuff like that. This a way of just sweating your assets and ensuring that you get all the value from it without having to drill a new well. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I know it will be beneficial to everybody on this call. What SP does is that it gives us the opportunity to keep learning, keep hearing. It's a forum where people share knowledge that you might not actually have access to, but the forum and SP gives you an opportunity to just get it for free. And so I plead with everyone on this call to just open up your minds, keep learning, keep listening. I know that no knowledge is wasted. So really looking forward to this discussion, and let's have a good evening. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Madam President. Words on Marble, the engine behind all of the activities and the brain. We are very privileged to have you and honored to have you lead us. Thank you and welcome once again. Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard about the topic. We know in passing the name. I'd like to introduce to the House and yield the floor to our expert. His name is Ibe Nicholas Makwe. He is a seasoned operational reservoir engineer with strong technical, analytical, and problem-solving skills. He has over 14 years of industry experience in the oil and gas sector and currently works with Shell Petroleum Development Company in Port Harcourt. He holds a bachelor's in petrochemical engineering from Rivers State University and a master's in petroleum engineering and project development from the Institute of Petroleum Studies, which he was jointly awarded by IFB School France and Uniport. He is a graduate of Shell Intensive Training Program, SITP, a pioneer graduate of Shell Graduate Program, SGP, and the Shell Advanced Technical Program, SATP. His area of experience covers reservoir development planning, well and reservoir management, optimization, and field resource estimation, classification and reporting, to mention a few. He's passionate about inspiring young professionals to understand the why rather than the how of their technical deliverables. He's married to his beloved wife, Chinelo, and they are blessed with 2 kids. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you an astute scholar, a professional, Ibe Nicholas Makwe. Thank you very much, sir, and welcome. Thanks for accepting to do this. I yield the floor to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jude. Thanks, everyone, for giving me this honor to make this presentation before you. I was particularly, my heart went to my mouth when I saw Professor Onyekon, who happens to be the man who opened my eyes to PVT. So those who have probably imagined that I was a PVT expert in Shell, that's the man who was very instrumental to doing that. So Prof, thanks for coming around. So I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what part of the globe you are in. My name, like they said, is Ibe Makwe, and I work with Shell. I have over 14 years of experience, like has been said. And I will be talking about the possibility of a high recovery from naturally depleted reservoirs. I'll be sharing my screen, and please let me know once you can see me. Once you can see my screen, rather.
Yes, I see your screen.
Okay, and let me attempt to also turn on my video. But in the course of the presentation, should we have problems with the bandwidth, I may have to turn it off.
Could you also put the screen on a slideshow?
Oh, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So I guess everyone can see it now, right?
Absolutely, very clear. Thank you.
Okay, good. Good. So I feel excited sharing this with every one of us here. But somehow I feel a little bit careful and perhaps maybe nervous would be the right word to say of how it will be received. And that's because I understand the controversial nature of this topic, and really no thanks to, in a sense, to the inherent uncertainties that seem to make part of the oil and gas business. But which paradoxically speaking is one of the things that makes being an oil and gas professional an interesting career to pursue. I expect to see a mixed reaction and perhaps some skewness towards the extremes. Some will support my view and some will not support. By the way, I would like to say ahead of time that the views presented here are my views and not that of the company I work for, which is Shell. So I take full responsibility of it, of everything I'm going to say here. And but one thing I want to beg you, whichever divide you fall under, I just want to plead with you to keep an open mind, because and also to wear the heart of a learner, because like we say in Shell, that it's always a good principle to have a learner's mindset. So without much ado, let me go straight to what the presentation is about. So this is how I intend to anchor the presentation. I will give a little bit of a background of why I decided, I and my other colleagues who were part of this work, why we decided to do a further inquiry on the possibility of having a high recovery. And then we'll look at some historical perspective of recovery factors. And then we will go into the factors that influence recoveries. And then I will dovetail into the methodologies that are adopted to resolve the inquiry. And we will end with looking at 2 field cases. And after that, I will conclude. So when I joined my company, that was about 14 years ago, I was given a probation project. And part of that project was to investigate why we were having a high recovery from a particular reservoir. So they were concerned because it didn't look like the norm. And over the years from that time up until now, as I speak to you, I observed that whenever a recovery is getting towards 70%, or it has even, recovery to date has even hit 70%, there is some form of concern. And people begin to suspect the in-place volume. We begin to say, PG means the production geologist. Are you sure you really estimated this in place? Well, we have a look at it one more time. And then sometimes the PG will come back and say, I've looked at it. There's, based on all the technology I know and all my competence, I don't see any way I can increase this reservoir beyond this. And maybe sometimes even if they increase it, it's maybe a little bit marginal. It still doesn't take away the problem. And then we'll now move to a possible production allocation issues. Are you really sure? They come to the reservoir engineer and the production technician. Are you really sure that what you said you have produced from this reservoir is actually what it has actually produced from? And then we do a little bit of deep dive and we'll come back, and sometimes, or most times, there's no issue, that's what it is. And so I observed that, and that is coming from that knowledge that the phase we are in, which is primary recovery, we shouldn't be seeing recoveries up to 70% or more than. In fact, if at best we see, it should just reside in the textbooks. So the implications of these I see is that we now set up reviews, and those reviews are aimed at either justifying or nullifying the apparent realities. And then if the team concerned brings up some opportunities and say we can do some further developmental activities here, the reviewers sometimes tend to drag their foot, and I can understand their plight also too. And sometimes they can even restrict and say no to it, or sometimes even when they say yes, you see a pessimism in the way the reserves are estimated. And even some cases where there might be hyperbolic, there is a bias towards not wanting to go too far since we're already too far. Now, all these observations began the journey, and I said, hey, let's wait a little. Let's see whether there is something that is actually controlling this recovery that we have not really looked into deeply. And that was why I decided to do this. We decided to look into this thing. I would like to say upfront that the scope of this inquiry was limited to oil reservoirs, and that were oil reservoirs that are underwater drive. So any oil reservoir that is not underwater drive is not considered. So everything I'm speaking about has to do with oil reservoirs, not gas reservoirs that are underwater drive. Sorry. Okay, so going straight to the historical perspectives of recovery factor. Globally, we've recognized three distinct phases of oil recovery. We've seen that there is a primary recovery, secondary recovery, and there's a tertiary recovery. And we recognize that phase. In the past, it used to be recognized as an order, a chronological order that you start with the primary, you move to the secondary, and move to the tertiary. But however, that perspective has changed with time. So people are beginning to see that sometimes there are some primary recoveries that are not even economical to develop in the primary phase. So let's go straight to secondary. And I think in recent times, we're even getting straight to even tertiary where we can. So that has actually, and that's actually influenced by the fact that we want to get the most within the shortest possible time. So quite often a number of significant development does go straight to secondary recovery rather than stopping at the primary recovery. But what I see that may not have gained global acceptance is the possibility that under the primary recovery, we can have a very high recovery. And hence, even when you look at what people have proposed in the past, you will see a wide range. That's also attesting to the fact that there is still some disparity and not so much alignment about how much we can get. And there are different views. So I'll talk about that when I get into the methodology. However, what we are proposing is that we should have a paradigm shift from regional experience to include the understanding of what are those factors that control recovery factors. This work is highly qualitative and not really fully quantitative in the sense that I'm looking at details, but the idea is to stir up something within us as engineers to begin to look at those things that contribute to recovery factor and see if we can put in some effort into deliberately engineering those factors so that we can maximize recoveries from those kind of systems. So what are those factors that influence recovery factors? Recovery factors are largely influenced by 4 efficiencies. If you want to expand it a little bit, it's actually 5. The first is the microscopic sweep efficiency, which consists of 2 efficiencies, what we call the aerial sweep efficiency and the vertical sweep efficiency. And the second is the microscopic sweep efficiency, which is also known as the displacement sweep efficiency. The third is the connected volume factor. And the last is actually the economic efficiency factor. Now, these efficiencies are related by the multiplication operator. That's what they have found out, and it's actually in some literatures. So when you combine all these 5 efficiencies, they are combined by the multiplication operator. Now, what we observed is that in order for you to have a very high recovery factor tending towards the 70s, these individual efficiencies has to be very, very high. Not in terms of even the 80%, in school days, when you score 80%, that's an A. You need to have a super A in order to get a very high recovery factor. And to even illustrate this point better, if you multiply, if all of them were 80%, let's make that assumption, that all of them were 80%. By the time you multiply them, the maximum recovery factor you will have is just 33%. So this tells you that you need to be deliberate about getting a high recovery. And this also tells us something, that the voice of the weakest efficiency can drown the voice of the others, no matter how strong those others are. I mean, it reminds me of that adage that our strength is dependent on the guy on the weakest, the strength of the chain is dependent on the weakest link. So we need to pay attention to whatever it is that may seem weak. And, naturally speaking, we may want to ignore that weak guy and say it's not, but that weak guy has a very strong voice in pulling down recovery factor. That's what this is saying. Now, the inability to maximize all of them or to focus on some of them is the reason that we have low recovery factors in some reservoirs. So that means that we need to be deliberate about understanding each of these efficiency contributors because they are key to helping us to maximize recovery factor from water-driven system. Now, let's do a little bit of a deep dive, summarized deep dive as it were, into what these individual efficiencies are. And I will start with the microscopic sweep efficiency. Now, this microscopic sweep efficiency is an efficiency that looks at the efficiency of the displacement process on a microscopic scale. What I mean by that is that it's looking at it aerially and vertically. It makes an attempt to tell the story of how efficient the displacing fluid is contacting, my emphasis is on the word contact, is contacting the fluid of interest. So it's looking at how efficient is that displacing fluid, which in this case is water, displacing the displaced fluid or the fluid of interest, which is oil. And it's actually a combination of two efficiencies, which is the aerial sweep efficiency and the vertical sweep efficiency. And I have brought an illustration I found on the internet, and to illustrate this, I think it is a good illustration, even though it is applicable to a water flooded system. But you see, this can also be applicable to a natural system, because right there, we don't have an injector, but the aquifer is doing something. It's moving and sweeping the oil towards the producer. So the part of the aerial sweep efficiency, for example, is the part of the oil that has been contacted by the water over the part that is supposed to have been contacted by the water. So when you're looking at the vertical sweep efficiency, you are also looking at it from the a vertical plane, and you are looking at how much of the thickness has been contacted by that fluid. And you know, most often than not, our reservoirs are not purely homogeneous in nature. They are heterogeneous. And sometimes you can see them being layered into different permeability zones, with the one that has the permeability zone having the one that will easily allow fluid to flow, water to come into it. And so you can have a segregation that looks like this. So if you can see my cursor, this is where the water ought to have actually, if everything was homogeneous, this is where all the water should have actually been by this time. But the water is not actually there. It is being segregated because of different permeability zones that are here. And so the fraction, which is where the water actually has invaded, divided by where it is supposed to invade, is what you call the vertical sweep efficiency. But of interest to us is, what are the things that are actually influencing these things? Because that's where the engineering starts. Well, yeah, the engineering starts in understanding what it is, but the real engineering of these things is in understanding what are those things that affect what it is. And I realized that some of them are within our control, some of them are not within our control. Fluid mobilities, for example, under the natural primary recovery, we don't do anything to those things. They are just there. It is what nature has given to us. So if you have a case where you have water viscosity being higher than the being lower rather than the oil viscosity, the possibility of having fingering, viscous fingering is there, and you will have a very poor microscopic sweep efficiency. But if you have a case where it's the other way around, then nature seems to be helping you in that sense. And then you need to do something to also help nature. And that's why coning is one of those things that we don't want. As much as possible, we want to try to keep our production rate within a limit that is okay, so that we don't have this uneven movement of water. We want the sweep to be really good, because when you try to maintain that good sweep, you will have a very high microscopic sweep efficiency. Then another thing also too, when you're completing reservoirs, is to do your best, especially when you have this kind of drive mechanism, to complete your reservoir in such a way that the perforation is very optimized, possibly at the roof of the oil thickness as seen by the well. Because the farther you stay away from that roof, the likely that the oil that is above the top perforation will not be recovered. Then another thing also has to do with the well spacing, the way we spread the wells around that. I will talk a little bit about that when we get more into the other efficiencies. So the next one I want to look at is the microscopic sweep efficiency, which is also known as the displacement sweep efficiency. And this talks about the fraction of the oil that can move, the fraction of the oil that can move, how much of that oil that can move is actually moving. Because it is possible for the water to contact the oil and just kind of brush over it, and you leave a lot behind. But if it is moving and it is able to move what can move away, then you're having something that tends towards a high displacement sweep efficiency. And it's a very simple equation that gives us that value. It's just the difference between what you have initially in terms of the oil saturation and what you have remaining in terms of the SOR. So that fraction all over the initial oil saturation gives you that efficiency. It's one of the easiest to calculate. However, unfortunately, it's something that we don't have control over. We don't have control over the SOI. We don't have control over the SOR. The SOI is what nature gives to you. SOI in this case simply means the initial oil saturation. You don't have control over it. And how efficient that thing sweeps in terms of when you are under the primary recovery, you don't have control over that. That is actually in the domain of most often than not the enhanced oil recovery. They are looking for what to do to reduce this SOR. But under the primary recovery, you don't have that. However, this understanding is very key, even though you don't have control over it, because it will help you to reduce the bias towards having a low recovery. There are cases where nature provides a favorable situation such that the sweep is not just good in terms of the microscopic level, but also in the microscopic level. Now, in order to understand some of these things, to buttress that understanding, I need to just remind us, I know a lot of us know this, but just to remind us that there are three forces that are at play in our reservoirs. We have the viscous force, the gravity force, and the capillary forces. And they are all related by two numbers. One we call the capillary number, and the other one we call the bond number. Let me stop at this point to be sure that I'm still being heard. Can anybody confirm that they're still hearing me?
Right on.
Okay, good. So we have the capillary numbers and we have the bond number. And the relationship between the SOR and this number is an inverse one. What does that mean mathematically? It means that if you can increase these numbers, your SOR will go down. And that's the aim, because we want the SOR to go down. So what can we do to increase these numbers? There are three things I've written here that you can do to increase them. Unfortunately, like I said, you don't have control over them. But there is this second part here that I think we may have control over. And that is the issue of having a strong aquifer. Yes, the initial impression is that I don't have any control over the strength of the aquifer. But even when the aquifer is not too strong, you can effectively manage your reservoir and your withdrawal such that you can engineer, as it were, a strong aquifer. And what is really a strong aquifer? An aquifer that can maintain a pressure depletion that is very, very minimal. So even though it's not naturally strong, your engineering can be tending towards trying to see how you can make sure that your withdrawal is not so much that that aquifer strength depletes sharply. So that's one of the things you need to do in order to be able to, as it were, even though not in straight principle, have a little bit of control over the SOR. Now, the next one I want to look at is the connected volume factor. Now, the connected volume factor represents the fraction of the in-place volume that is connected to the development wells. You know, no matter how much your reservoir, how much volume you have down there, the only way you can get it out is to drill a well down there. You can't see it. The only way you can see that oil is to get a well that will assess it. Now, if you have a reservoir that has some form of permeability barrier, like a fault, and that fault seems to be compartmentalizing a part of that reservoir, and no well is drilled in that compartment, the chances are that all the other wells will not be able to see all the volumes. And by so doing, you're going to have a very low connected volume factor. A very typical example is what I have here. Consider this fictitious reservoir that I have here. And there was these two adjoining faults that seem to have compartmentalized the reservoir. Either we saw it or we thought it was not sealing. We decided to develop the reservoir and put wells around here. Now, while these wells may have a drainage area that can drain all this other part, but this place will not be drained. And what is the implication of this? You will have a low connected volume factor. And if, for example, this is 20% of the reservoir, your connected volume factor is simply 100 minus 20. That means 20% of my reservoir cannot be accessed by my well. I think that explains that view very well. Now, the last of them is the economic efficiency factor, which is simply an agglomeration, a combination of several factors that represents the physical and commercial constraints on the field. Now, what this factor simply helps us to address is the long-term ability of the reservoir to produce naturally. Now, there are some factors that may or may not. In fact, this particular efficiency combines both technical and non-technical factors. Now, sometimes you can have a reservoir, there's a lot of volume there, but there's no energy to produce it. And then you have to, that means it's all over. And so that's why preserving the energy in the reservoir is very key to us. That's why we don't like to lose the gas we have in the reservoir, because all this guarantees long-term productivity from that reservoir. Another thing is the life of the wells. I said something about the wells being the only way you can access those volumes. But if you are careless about the way you even planned your well at the beginning, if you don't plan it with the mindset of future interventions, such that the moment you have an issue in the future, you cannot intervene there, and given the cost of a well, that means the chances are, because by the time you look at what you have to drain again, and it is very small, which could have been drained very well or cheaper with an existing well with just a minimal repair, and because you did not take that into consideration during your developmental life of the reservoir, you will lose that privilege to maximize recovery. Another thing is also the facility in which it produces into. If the facility is also not well looked after, the chances are also too that you may lose your recovery. But if you take time to look at it, it will help. Then the capacity to deal with unwanted produced fuels, for example, gas and water, is also another thing to take into consideration. There are some times that some facilities may have to be shut as a result of regulations. Because I give a very typical example. There's a lot of noise about, and no, it's not noise, sorry for using that word, genuine concerns about our climate. And we are big time contributors. And so there's a drive to make sure that every facility has what we call associated gas solutions. So, and I think the government is even beginning to give ultimatums that if you can't have this in your facility, shut it down. What does that do? It means it limits your recovery factor. So that has to be something. Another thing is also the water you also produce. How do you dispose it? Do you meet the required quality? That could also be something that you need to look into that will help you elongate the life of your reservoir, which is what you want. Now, there are also some commercial constraints. They are not technical, but they are very serious. They are very serious that sometimes they can be more serious than the technical. If you're producing from a community, for example, where they don't like your face, they used to like it before, but they no longer like your face. They tell you to go. You try and do, in fact, you may even muster the strength of military might, but sometimes some of them are very resolute and nobody wants to have a safety issue. It becomes almost impossible sometimes to produce from such communities. Another thing is the oil price fluctuation. Let me speak a little bit about this oil price fluctuations and cost of operations. Because sometimes when you are producing, and that's why this thing has to be taught, we need to do a lot of thinking ahead of time, even before we sometimes get into producing the reservoir. It is a good production philosophy, if you can, where possible, to link several fields to a central processing facility, and not to just build facilities for each field. Because a time will come in each field where the production will go so low that it may not be able to sustain the economics of producing from that field, may not be able to sustain production from that particular facility. So if you have that already in mind and you develop fields centrally on one facility, even when the production from a particular field is not sustainable, the economics of the other field, when brought together, can make that one to keep producing. And that will help you increase your economic efficiency factor. Now, in terms of methodologies that we adopted to resolve this inquiry, we looked at three things. And the first we looked at is the benchmarking tool. And the second was the recovery efficiency consideration. And the third was we looked at real life field cases. Now, looking at the benchmarking tools, I personally believe and align with the philosophy that there is nothing like a self-made individual. We all build our lives and careers on the shoulders of great minds. Like I have also too. Onyekon was very instrumental in building my career. Professor Onyekon was instrumental in doing that. So we all build our careers on the minds of great men. So there are people in the past who have worked in various regions. They have looked at the entire primary drive mechanism, and they have come up with what they think, based on their own experiences, are limits. And there are divergent views, as you can see. I was able to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 7, 8 of them authorities that I actually got their values. And what I saw is that there's quite some disparity in the ranges. And the question is, which one do you align to? But what this is telling us is this. Some of them understood that it was an argument those days. Some of them wanted to stay away from the argument, like Dix didn't want to get so much involved in the argument. That's why he said, well, if you're looking at water drive, I'm not giving you any limit, but I know you can get something in excess of 50%. Another guy, Ivan Sandra, said, well, you can get up to 60%. But one good thing, our SPE, if you look at one of those, our old SPE video series, they were bold enough to say, we can get up to 80% from water drive. And I think I align so much with that view. But whatever it is, the truth is that we need, beyond these views, why they are good and they are very helpful to provide some form of control, we need to also look at what are those things that affect it, like we have done, and see if we can have a way of estimating those things in order to be able to come up with a high recovery where possible. So, like looking at the recovery efficiency considerations, I've stated earlier that recovery factor is a product of 5 efficiencies. And what I want to say is that these efficiencies are at play in every reservoir. And they are the ones that really account for the variation we see, even in localized environments. And understanding these efficiencies is key to localizing your experience where possible. And where possible, engineer a high recovery factor. Yes, those benchmarking tools, and they are very wonderful ones beyond what I've written. Some of them are looking at even properties, and that's a good development. But the point I'm trying to make here is that it's good to go beyond just looking at, okay, what's the range I can see in this environment, to understanding what are those things that are affecting my recovery factor. And if I understand them, are there anyone I can engineer in order to make sure that I increase those things? So when we focus effort to maximizing what is within our control and hope or encourage nature to also do their own, we're definitely going to have a high recovery where that is possible from all depleted water-driven reservoirs. Now, in terms of field cases, there are 2 field cases, real field cases that I want to talk about today. And the first one is EPUC F0A reservoir, and the second one is what we call Saguro D4X reservoir. Now, let's look at this EPUC F0 reservoir. I'm almost at the tail of my presentation. This reservoir is actually in the swamp. It started producing about 47 years ago. It had an in-place volume of about 118, and has to date done about 74% of its in-place volume. It was one of those reservoirs that was looked at. And if you look at the reservoir, this is the reservoir here. If you can see my cursor, this one here, that is the reservoir. Don't look at this one with gas. This one here is actually the reservoir. You will see that there is already a well control. There is a well drilled here telling you that you can't find hydrocarbon beyond here. And there's also another well here telling you that you can't find hydrocarbon beyond here. So in a very, relatively speaking, we have some form of control over what we think is the hydrocarbon that is here. The geologist looked at it and said, sorry, I can't stretch it beyond this. See, can't you see that I have well control? And look at this well here in the hydrocarbon distribution plot. It's telling me that my oil is thinning out towards the flank. There's nothing for me to stretch again towards here. And so we looked at the production allocation issue. There's nothing. This is what the well has done. In fact, if there's anything, this well has probably even done more than this, given the experience we have in Niger Delta of thefts. So this reservoir has a thickness of about 400 feet. The geologists have said it has a short face and gave us some, and the geologist shows that there's some form of homogeneity in the reservoir. All these are suggesting that we have a very high connected volume. And look at the distribution of the wells. This looks to me like a reservoir that is well developed. And from the geologist's assessment, he's saying that these faults are not sealing faults, that they are there, but they are partially sealing, which means that flow can occur across it. And this is actually a very light reservoir. When you look at the fluid properties, it's got a viscosity of about 61.61 cp, an average permeability of about 3 DASI, and you have good well coverage, like I said. All these things are pointing towards high efficiencies, those individual efficiencies, like I talked about. All these are pointing towards high efficiency. So it's not surprising when we are seeing something like this. And then it's producing into a facility that we have. The facility is also hosting other wells, other fields. I think it hosts about 2 fields. So we're looking at a facility that is optimized, and it has been well taken care of over the last 47 years. And so we're still producing. Yes, we've had some host community interruptions, but they have been well managed over time. And this is giving rise to a very high economic efficiency. And so all these things, when you look at it, looking at the fact we took all those wells you see there that we're producing, we took pressures from all those wells, and that those pressures indicated good hydraulic connectivity, as you can see here, good hydraulic connectivity. And when we looked at the pressure depletion over time, we just saw 7% after 47 years of production. We're just seeing 77% pressure depletion. And then sometime in 2013, we took an RST, which is a residual saturation to log that looks at the post-production saturation. And this is what we are seeing. This is what it was initially. Look at it, very wonderful and very clean. High initial oil saturation in the 80s. And then you see what you are seeing after this is 2013. And I can tell you that this well is still producing. This is what it saw in 2013. And see the level of flushing that you have seen here. And as I speak to you, this well is still producing. And so that tells you clearly that you are dealing with a reservoir that has a very high displacement sweep efficiency. And it only suggests that the recovery factor we are seeing is actually true. I don't know how much time I have, but I'm tempted to skip this one because of time. Jude, I don't know whether I can go to or just go. Should I skip it?
No. Yes, you could take one more. I think the story and the methodology stays the same, so one more will be fine.
Okay, well, and coincidentally, the last one. So this is also another one. This one has produced for 51 years, also in the swamp terrain. It's not as big as the other one, has about 46 million stock tank barrels, and to date we have done 71%, and it's still producing, and there is still chance. And this is one very unique one because unique in the sense that it had a dedicated flow station to itself. But at some point, due to declining production, we saw that it wasn't economical to continue producing this, and we had to route it to a nearby flow station. And that has actually helped to elongate the economic efficiency. And so we are looking at about 74% also to be able to, by the time this reservoir is done. And in terms of pressure depletion, this one has just depleted 4%. Just 4% pressure depletion is what we have seen. We are doing very, very, very well in this one in terms of the displacement sweep efficiency. As at the time we looked at it, we looked at the log, although it's not presented here, we were seeing a residual saturation that was even lower than the other one, which is about 10%. So these two real life cases brings me to a conclusion, combined with our understanding that high recovery from naturally depleted water-driven oil system is possible. This possibility is not only based on observation from localized regions, but there is a physics that is driving it. And that physics is based on those efficiencies, which are strongly related to one another by the multiplication of Pareto. And this tells us that the strength of the resulting recovery factor is dependent on the weakest efficiency. And I must tell us something, that engineering a high recovery factor is hard work. And not just hard work, focus on every of the efficiency factor that contributes to it. The moment you focus only on the technical and leave the non-technical, you are probably going to be very disappointed, as I showed you from that example. Now, a good understanding of this efficiency, especially the ones within our control, is key to engineering in high recovery. Now, I would like to say that further developmental activities in such reservoirs should not be discouraged. Once we're able to establish that this reservoir is like that, let's refrain from discouraging further developmental activities. If the evidences are clear that we can get more, let's go ahead and get more. And let's try and erase that bias from our mind that it is not possible. And I will end by acknowledging these guys that are here. Very wonderful, superb mind that actually contributed to this work and helped shape the story that you have seen. Thank you very much. And I hope I've been able to successfully paint the picture that it is possible for us to be able to have a high recovery from a naturally depleted oil reservoir. Thank you.
Wow. That was a wonderful pitch, almost sounding like a graduation lecture. Thank you very much, Ibe. Thank you for how you've taken us through the storyline, touched upon the fundamentals, back to your sweep efficiencies, and all of the different elements, whether macro, micro, and how best your connectivity is vis-a-vis compartmentalization. Thank you for making us realize that one, there is nature. Second, there is nature, because nature still gives us the knowledge to understand nature. And that is where we could engineer things. How do we plan and manage our facilities? How do we manage existing and planned wells? Well placement being key and critical. and how best do we manage our fluids in terms of fluid handling. You must pay attention to your weak guy. And this message is for us all, both technical in our teams, knowledge, ensuring that we all understand what we do, because the weak guy, whether it's in a facility or as a competent gap, is critical. Pay attention, optimize your perforation, look out for the cresta, ensure that you're putting your wells and perforating it nicely. Space them, don't be in a hurry. There's a lot of companies now just wants to get the field, scoop quickly in 2 years. And then because of that drive, you're rushing and you're actually impacting your primary recovery. The basic principles are still critical: your viscosity, gravity, capillarity. I remember P. and Okeke, you know how he defines capillarity, the tendency of a liquid to fall or rise in the narrow capillary tube. So some of those elementaries are still very key. And then he went on to benchmark and look at what has happened historically. Don't struggle. That's what One Avenue SP gives to us. We learn from Total, we learn from Shell, we learn from Exxon. You see what's going on. We all bring it together to better ourselves. And then life cases to show where this has been practiced. I really wish there was a case where these things were not practiced, where the wells were poorly placed, where the perforation were poorly done, and then seeing the impact, how compared to where it was properly done, it's affecting. Keep an eye on your environment of operation. Economic factors are critical. Now the oil price is blossoming. Don't also let that be your driver to get out what you can immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, that was my learning. That was my notes, my nuggets. Feel free to share yours in comments. Feel free to clarify some in questions, and feel free to add your stares in observation. I'd like to open the mic for comments, questions, and observation. Nicholas, over to you. Thank you. Hi, Nicholas. Simeon, not the presenter. Your hands are up.
Okay.
Go ahead. Hello, Simeon. Hello, Nicholas. Can you unmute?
Okay, I can unmute now.
Okay,
Good
go ahead.
evening, Doc. Nice presentation. So, in the course of the lecture, something struck. I have a question I need clarity on. The speaker said one way of optimizing our recovery efficiency.
Nicholas, could you start out by introducing yourself just for network,
okay.
since we are not face to face? Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Nicholas Simia Walson. I'm a process safety engineer with Nigeria Ajip Company, and also a YP with SP Section 103. So I wanted to know, why do we have to place our injection wells just at the tip of the cap of the reservoir? What's the science behind that philosophy, and how does it influence our recovery? I really want to know why.
Okay, so I think maybe I wasn't very vocal about that. That picture I shared, which I believe is this one here. Can you still see my screen? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So this picture I shared was actually looking at a secondary. Under secondary recovery is where you do this, where you place injectors. Under primary recovery, you don't have injectors. But I was careful to say that this is just like an illustration. It's also what happens in natural systems. And the idea of putting an injector towards the end there is to be able to have a good sweep efficiency. If you put it in the middle, the chances are that you may, because you have to push from probably one direction. If you put it in the middle, you will be leaving some that are behind it. So the idea is that you want to push from the edges, as it were, the regions around, you want to surround it with water to be sure that you push into the oil wells. And that's why I said in natural systems where you don't have that, if you have a reservoir that the edges is surrounded by water and under it there is water, so you see that everywhere there's access to water, then you'll be able to have that good push, and you'll be able to have that will help you improve the microscopic sweep efficiency, which is also an important parameter to consider in terms of high recovery. I don't know if that helps.
Yep, I think so. There is a comment. Prof, do you want to come off on mute? That could also stir some more conversation. We have to start looking seriously at the peculiarities of our reservoirs rather than relying solely on textbook numbers. So that's a message. Prof, would you like to add more words to that, or that was enough? Could you open up Prof's mic? While that is also coming on, do we have any other question? Ibe, I'm also thinking, what would be the role? Maybe these ones are also naturally driven, of wettability in this case. So
Okay.
whether you're looking at an oil wet, rock, or water wet.
Yeah. So wettability has impacts the residual oil saturation, which is this element here, and is usually under the realm of enhanced oil recovery in order to impact it. So under the natural drive mechanism, we don't touch the reservoir, as it were. So because we don't touch the reservoir, we allow the wettability of the natural system to play out. So it doesn't have much role in this sense, except when you now get into the enhanced oil recovery space, where you now begin to want to touch the wettability, and with the aim of reducing this SOR. So the moment you're able to touch the wettability and you allow the system to be releasing more oil, in other words, reducing the capillary impact of retaining oil, then you will have this SOR go down and you have a higher recovery. But that's under the realm of enhanced oil recovery.
Yeah, that's clear. Okay, do we have any other comment or question? I also see that there's a role for, you want to get into placing your well in the right position for an advanced field. Most times in deep water, we take advantage of 4D seismics, where we can almost see how the amplitude behavior is when we introduce water and flush it in. And then that can help us know where we've got unswept hydrocarbon, and then we target that. But onshore, it's a bit different because repeatability is low in terms of acquisition. How best can we manage? Because it's very important. You made a comment around how you place your well. So how best, apart from surface value, just saying you've got well here, avoid that by meters and place another, maybe it's compartmentalized. How best can you see where to place your well to be able to recover some bypassed unswept hydrocarbon? Okay,
thanks for that. That's why data acquisition during the production life of a field is very important, because they help for further developmental activities, like you said. Now, in cases like what you've mentioned, where repeatability of the seismic, in other words, acquisition of 4D seismic is almost near impossible, because you have a lot of places that are now built up. You can't go and start shooting seismic around those places again. We have to rely on things like reservoir simulation and other data like your well test, to be able to understand where there is boundary, if there's a boundary, and build a reservoir simulation. Now, that's actually what sometimes we do. We'll build a reservoir simulation, integrating all this data. When we build a reservoir simulation, which is a 3D picture of what is in the reservoir, and we try to match the production from those wells, then it's able to give us a picture of where likely we may be having some bypassed oil where have not been drained. And if we take the step of doing a very good data acquisition program, things like acquiring full BHPs, you might be able to test, especially places where you suspect that there might be some permeability boundaries. Those well tests can give you those things. So when you integrate the well test with the 3D model, you might begin to have some idea of where the undrained areas are.
Fantastic. I'm sure that those comments would interest the likes of Gerard, History Matching. I see you on the call. Okay, there is a hand. You've got your hand raised earlier. Yes, it's still up. Oh yeah, I just mentioned Gerard and his hands went up. Do you, and then that would be the 3 we could take, unless by serious exemption. And if you still want to speak, please go ahead now. And then after which we take Wale, and then we'll come to Gerard as the last comment or question for this session. Thank you. Over to you if you can. Engineer, could you please turn on the mic for these 3 persons so that they could follow on immediately if they are not able to unmute from their end? Engineer please.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation, quality presentation. I just wanted to ask, from all you've said on the application, if I'm trying to use our local polymer, locally sourced polymer in Nigeria, then I'm trying to alter information like enhancing oil recovery. We all know how the HCI polymers are quite expensive now. And I'm trying to probably recover, I'm not looking at primary. I've gone past primary. I'm looking at tertiary, which has to do with chemical flooding. Is this method still probably applicable if I'm using our locally sourced polymer as a displacing fluid against the displaced fluid in the formation?
Okay, if I get you very well, you're probably asking if that equation in terms of that recovery factor is applicable.
Yes, recovery factor.
I think the categorical answer I'll give is yes. That equation is universal and applies to whatever
universal.
phase. In fact, whatever we are doing in whichever phase, we are only trying to focus on one or more of those efficiency factors. Like I said, one of the things that EOR, which is the method you have done, which is the method you just quoted, what they are trying to do, they are trying to increase the displacement sweep efficiency. They are trying to make sure that we have a higher movable oil, that something is going to change the physical and the chemical properties in the reservoir in order to release the oil that it is holding back. And what does that do? You are increasing your displacement sweep efficiency.
It's a case of if you don't move, I move you. Wally,
okay,
let's get to
okay, so sir, so I can still tag this as normal viscous fingering, right?
The thing about viscous fingering is that it has the impact of reducing your sweep efficiency, your microscopic sweep efficiency, and you don't want that. You want to, so the polymer, what you're trying to do in the polymer is probably to increase the viscosity. Yes, increase the viscosity of the water also too, so that the oil, in addition to increasing the displacement sweep efficiency,
I don't want to say something. We are not using water. We are trying to use our locally sourced polymer, which is O4 and starch glue. This locally starch glue as our displacement fluid.
Yeah, but the truth is that they have a base to which you are carrying it into the reservoir. You need to put it in a liquid, right? Which is likely water.
Yeah, water. It mixes with water. Yeah.
So that's what I mean. So when you do that, you are going to inject it, and the idea is also because in addition to the ED, you're also wanting a good sweep because those things matter. If you focus only on the ED and you don't focus on efficient sweeping, you will still have a low recovery factor, like what I explained there. So you're trying to do 2 things, even if you don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks. Let's go to Wale and then we'll come to Gerard. Wale, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I quite appreciate Dr. Ib and Engineer Ipe for such a wonderful talk on recovery, enhancing recovery. I want to ask, in the
sorry, I don't know if I'm the only one. I can't hear him again.
Of the talk, you did mention that efficiency of the reservoir. Can you hear me now?
Okay, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. So you did mention gravity, you mentioned capillary, then you mentioned viscosity. Now, in the instance where we see less than 20, we have a API that is less than 20, we can see that the viscosity is very high. In what technology, what impact what can we employ to ensure that we are able to reduce the viscosity of less than 20 API crude?
Okay, so in a case where you have high viscosity in a reservoir, although I know you were going on and off, so I'm just trying to put your words together. Sorry, my network, I don't know if it's mine or yours. I wasn't hearing very well. But as I understand the question, you're asking a case where you have a high viscosity reservoir, what can you do to increase the recovery, right? Am I correct?
You are right.
Yeah. So in that case, unfortunately, there's not much you can do under natural recovery. You might want to reduce your withdrawal rate so that you don't have too much viscous injury, but I can almost guarantee that you won't have much coming out from the reservoir. And that is usually the space of enhanced oil recovery. And under the enhanced oil recovery, things you can try is what the last person talked about. Polymer flooding can help. Steam injection, which although is not practiced in this part of the world, where we reduce the viscosity of the crude, is also another thing that can help. And even some chemical surfactants are also there. So there are some other things we do in order to be able to impact that, but they all fall under the realm of enhanced oil recovery.
Thank you. So take the last one. We are out on time too. So let's take the last one, Gerard. Keep it short and crisp. Thanks.
Good evening, all. Thank you very much, Mr. Ibe, for that very wonderful presentation. My name is Gerald, and I am a very young production reservoir engineer. I have two very quick questions from your presentation. The first is tied to one of the factors you mentioned, one of the efficiencies that's in terms of the economics. So I just quickly wanted to confirm that that is actually tied to the economic recovery factor, or COP, which is usually dependent on the particular company and not the technical recovery factor for the reservoir. That's my first question. The second question is, in most cases, when we see such a case where we have very high recoveries, most times we try to, we struggle, building reservoir models that match the history. Most of the time, we try to tweak or alter the aquifer parameters for a case of strong aquifer drive to replicate the behavior we see. But in most cases, we come up with maybe parameters that seem very unreasonable. So most times the issue is actually proving through reservoir models that we can actually have the high recovery from the reservoir with the in-place volumes that we've initially assumed. So how were you able to get a reservoir simulation model for the two case studies you mentioned that was able to replicate the high recovery efficiency you were seeing? And if so, what would you advise, like steps to take for people who might be having such an issue, struggling to produce models that could replicate the match, or to replicate the history that we see for those particular unique cases? Those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, let me start with the second one. Typically speaking, what I see around is that when you have reservoirs that have very high recovery, where there is already a bias not to produce more, people don't do 3D simulation model for such kind of reservoirs, because 3D simulation model is actually a very intensive methodology for reserves estimation. And when you almost know that there's not much you're already getting close to the roof of it. In fact, the roof is already troubling you. Why do I want to go and trouble myself for that? That's another thing you need to look at. Now, there's also a peculiar problem. There are problems with dynamic simulations, and history matching is one of that big problem. It's recognized, and many times they have come up with several tools. Like in Shell, we do what we call assisted history matching, where all the uncertainties, all the possible uncertainties are put together, and we use some form of probabilistic this thing to be able to look at the possible ones that can match. So I think that falls under the realm of all those assisted history matching and looking at the uncertainty and defining it very well properly. What makes history matching almost impossible is because of our uncertainty. And that's what I said at the beginning, that the industry is laden with a lot of uncertainties. What you think you know, by the time you're getting closer to the end of your reservoir, you probably realize that you don't know so much. In fact, I heard somebody say sometimes that all models are wrong. Only a few are useful. And it's not that it's bad. It's just because of what we know and what we don't know. So I don't know if that addresses your second question.
Yes, it does. But so
let's wrap it up
okay.
here. Apologies.
Maybe after now, you can reach me privately and we can talk more about that.
So that sounds like a consultancy conversation. On a lighter note, I know that's not the case, but please, we can continue the rest in the chat. Please stay on the line, and if there are more questions, you could engage. But I'm happy, and that's why I allowed it a bit for us to run. It's an interesting conversation. It's meeting us where most of the basins are, and also where the hunger for WRFM takes us. And then we're able to manage our reservoirs. And as SPE, we interface directly with the use of some of these concepts. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope it's been a fruitful one. Please, if you can unmute your mic or use the virtual hand clap, let's give Mr. Ibe a resounding round of applause for having enlightened us this evening and giving us quite a number of nuggets to go with. We go straight to the rest program. Thank you very much. And please, we'll take our group photos soon, just after a couple of slides. Okay, so this is where we next now. Okay, so this is where we appreciate our presenter. I like to call on a Prof is no longer on the call. SC, this is in your realm, but you can gladly choose to assign it to an SD on the call or anybody you will. But please, I'd like you to present this certificate to Mr. Ibe for taking us through this monthly technical meeting and for a good job well done. Madam, please.
I'm handing it over to Sahid Oluso. Please do that for us, sir. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining. Yeah.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Ibe, thank you very much for these presentations. And on behalf of the SPE Port Harcourt and our young professionals, I say we present you this certificate. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate.
Thank you. Thank you. An official copy will be emailed to you in due course from the Secretariat. And once again, we duly appreciate your time and your effort and your knowledge. Thank you very much. Please stay with us while we take on the rest of the SP activity. But before we go, let's have our group photograph now, because there's a high chance that the presenter will drop off or some other persons on the call. Let's take the group photograph and then we come back quickly in the next 10-15 minutes, hopefully, and wrap up. Please, let's take the group photograph now. Do well to turn on your camera. Nice to see us all. So photographer 1, 2, 3, have you captured Israel?
I'm on it. I will inform you shortly.
Okay. So, all right, thank you. So thankfully, our next MTM is most likely going to happen physically. So we'll take this picture, shaking hands and having the rest of the questions and conversation.
Yeah, we are done.
Okay, during and after the meeting. All right, let's go quickly with the rest of the program. So just as I was saying, we're open to sponsorship. Thanks to one of our sponsors, we'll be having the next monthly technical meeting face-to-face. We'll unveil the sponsor name on that day. I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you very much. But this also to still by extension inform us that slots are still limitedly available to be one of the sponsors. So imagine bringing in the amount of brain conversation courtesy of you, the advert that comes along with it. And these are opportunities that we have for public relations and to impact people. So take up one of the few available slots for our monthly technical meetings. This is a call for sponsorship. Meet myself, meet the SC, any of the board member, or at most, if you couldn't find any SPE member you know, the information will be passed to us. You can still see our contact and also our email addresses. Thank you very much. So let's go to upcoming events. Is it PC? Is PC on the call?
I'll just take it.
Okay, thank you, madam. Over to you.
All right, so good evening once more. So next 1 month, we have a lot of events upcoming. Tomorrow we have the YP Fitness Day at Charlie's. Gives an opportunity for you to network while you're exercising and having fun with people. There are a lot of things that will be done: aerobics, handball, basketball, several things, just to keep body and mind and soul in one place. Time is 8 o'clock. Place is Charlie's Fitness Center at Stadium Road. And date is tomorrow, 28th October. Please don't miss it. Yeah, then we're also working towards our SP week planned. We already have a date confirmed, December 9th. Please don't miss the award night is December 9th. There are a lot of programs that we're going to have till that now ends up with the award night. We really look forward to seeing everyone on this call. Please come with as many of your friends, your colleagues as possible for that event. We have the Work for Life, same December 9th. We also have some programs planned for our students that will give the opportunity for the students to compete against each other, and then prizes and awards will be given out. So we look forward to seeing everyone at that event. We also have another monthly technical meeting planned for November. We'll come up with the topic maybe in another 2 weeks or so. But like Dr. Jude already told us, it's going to be face-to-face. So we'll be able to actually see each other and connect very well and create more relationships. That's what we need to keep progressing in this world of ours. Thanks. That's all from section 103 in the next 1-2 months.
Thank you very much, Madam President. We'll keep those dates in mind, and also our dear communications keeps sending us those reminders. I think at this point, I'd like to invite the membership. We'll take the membership quickly.
Sorry.
Because we know that.
Okay, it's
Let's do the industry quiz results. So part of the
okay, that's communications, right?
Yeah. Yeah, part
Okay,
of the new initiatives that we came up with for this board here is to have a quiz. We have the weekly quiz, and we also have the monthly quiz. The monthly quiz normally ties to the topic of discussion for the monthly technical meeting, where quiz is sent out and then given opportunity for people to respond. And we come up with the first three who are recognized, and then a small token is given to them. Wamaka, please continue. Okay, so go to the next slide. Go to the next slide. So we had 44 people participate in this month's own. And this is just the summary of the different affiliations that participated. So let's unveil the winners. So our first goes to Briggs Lolo. Second is Edwin Joe, and third is Nzeduru Onyedikachi. Please, are you guys on the call? Okay, congratulations to you. This certificate will be sent to the winners. And okay, Joe, Edwin, congrats for winning. We hope we are looking forward to you participating in more. And don't just stop winning. The gift prize keeps increasing on a monthly basis. So just keep answering the questions. Congrats to the winners, and we look forward to more participants for next month's quiz. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for taking charge of that session and presenting those certificates to the noble, delightful winners. If that is all from the communications desk, I guess we get a word from the membership desk. A membership, if you could keep it under 2 minutes, that would be
Thank you, Jude. Yes, can you share our slide? Yes, let's share our slide, please. Go to very brief. Thank you, Dr. Jude. Thank you, presenter and session chairman. We are the membership team of session 103. I'm going to go through a lot of what we have for you to be a member. I believe so many of us on this call are not logging, or we have to renew our membership. Please, the next slide, please. Okay, sorry. Okay, we are the Society of Petroleum Engineers, session 103. A place for all of the oil and gas industry. We come together as professionals and students, regardless our experience and courses. We come together to share knowledge, just like what we just finished today, one of the presentations we finished today. So our membership is across our student. We have student membership, and we have recent graduates. We have young professionals. We have senior members. Those are our category of membership. So we have a lot to benefit from SPE. SPE have a lot for you over there. If you not join as SPE member, or you not renew your membership, there is a lot for you to enjoy. We have strong industry network between leaders and peers and mentors. For students, you have opportunity to have mentors. For those of us in industry, you need to meet your peers in different industry. Opportunity for sharing lectures, technical events, just like the one we have today, and other more enhanced industry knowledge for us to boost our various career. Also, we have conferences at every point, at every time of the year across the globe and across the world. And enjoy a lot of SPE. SPE have a lot to offer you. If you go to SPE.org, you have a lot. You can enjoy our e-library. You can enjoy SPE Connect. We have so many. You can also volunteer, also share your knowledge. Just as our presenter have shared knowledge today. Every one of us are here today to enjoy it. So it's an opportunity for you also to mentor students, to share knowledge and come up with anything. And also SP is there also to give out to you. So we have a lot to be a SP member. So next slide, please. So if you are not a member today, I will plead with you immediately after this presentation, you do a chat up with us. We give you update on how you can become member. For those of us that have not renewed, please, we want us to all renew. We have over 1,206 professionals and over 3,021 students as member of SP Section 103. So please join us today, scan the code. You can renew your membership by scanning the code, or we send a link to you. Also, you can also renew your membership today by scanning the code and also maybe get in contact with us. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. So you can see most of our program. This is our contact person. You can get in contact with the session secretariat. We email the form for you and also give you update and do follow up. These are the lead membership team. If you want to get in contact with us, just do a screenshot. You get in contact with us. We are here 24 hours to attend to you, to listen to you, to give the audience as any moment, as any time. Next is
Thank you very much.
So these are these are most of our programs.
Yeah, so thank you very much. So let's go to closing remarks. Thanks.
Thank you, membership chair. Please, ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed what you witnessed today and like more of this, be a member. You can even drop a chat on this call. I'm a new member, and a membership committee will follow up quickly. So let's go to the last lap. We're already 3 minutes compensating, I guess, because we didn't start exactly 5:30. So for closing, before we take the closing prayer, I'd like the SC to give her words of closing remark, and then we say
I'm delegating that to one of the please closing remarks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Engineer Wanode, over to you, please. So you can see there is a chat already on the saying I want to renew my membership. So please, I expect membership committee to follow up on that quickly. Thank you. Engineer Wanode, if your mic is free.
Okay, looks like if he's left. Okay, so on behalf of section 103, we wish to thank everyone for joining this first monthly technical meeting. Thanks for eBay for sharing this topic with us and for pulling a lot of your colleagues. I say a lot of your colleagues were also on the call, so thanks for pulling them. We look forward to, I hope eBay after today that you will still join all the other technical meetings and you'll come with all your friends and colleagues. That's what we want to do. We want to bring more people to learn and appreciate. You know, a lot of people join SP without knowing the benefits they get from it. And so listening to Mene, all the things he said, the only way we can be able to pass this to people is by pulling people along. So let's not attend alone. Let's always come with friends and colleagues so that they will also see what they stand to benefit by being active members of SPE. So let's all have a good night rest. Looking forward to seeing a lot of us at the Charlie's Fitness Center tomorrow. Good night, everyone, and thanks.
Thank you. Signing off, let's then listen to the last, and then we'll take a bow. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Keep promoting peace as you go about your businesses until we come your way again next time, next station. I remain your host, Dr. Jude, the Technical Information Chair. Goodbye and good night. Bye for now.